Have you ever had a moment so unexpected that it turned your entire world upside down? For Minji, working as a waitress at one of the busiest restaurants in Seoul was nothing new. Every day was the same: long shifts, impatient customers, heavy trays, and barely any time to breathe. She was used to the chaos, the pressure, and the exhaustion. But tonight? Tonight would change everything. The restaurant was packed. Every table was full, orders kept piling up, and Minji felt like she had been running non-stop since the moment she stepped into work. She balanced a tray of steaming hot dishes, dodging waiters, apologizing to customers, and forcing a smile even as her feet ached. Just a few more hours, she told herself. She had no time to think about anything else until the moment he walked in. The bell above the door chimed, and Minji barely glanced up, too focused on delivering an order. But then, she heard the whispers. Is that? Oh my God. It's really him. Why would he come here? Confused, she turned to look. And her breath caught in her throat. A tall man in a cap and hoodie stepped inside, moving quietly toward an empty table. He kept his head slightly down, as if trying to avoid attention, but Minji recognized him immediately. It was Kim Soo-hyun. Her heart stopped. No way. Why is he here? She barely had time to process before her manager appeared beside her, panicked. Minji! Go take that order now. She blinked. Me? Her manager nodded quickly. You're one of the best. Don't mess this up. Minji swallowed hard, gripping her notepad as she approached his table, her hands slightly shaking. What was she supposed to say? Taking a deep breath, she forced a smile. Welcome to our restaurant. What can I get for you? Kim Soo-hyun looked up just slightly, his eyes meeting hers for a brief moment. Minji forgot how to breathe. He had a presence that was both calm and intense, the kind that made her feel like she was the only person in the room. But instead of acting like a celebrity, he simply smiled politely. I'll have whatever you recommend, he said. Minji blinked. Oh. Our specialty is the beef bulgogi. Then I'll have that, he said, handing her the menu. She nodded quickly, scribbling down the order. I'll bring it right out. As she walked away, her hands felt clammy. Did I just take an order from Kim Soo-hyun? The whispers continued around the restaurant, but he didn't seem to notice or care. Instead, he sat there, waiting patiently, completely unbothered by the attention. Minji had served plenty of high-profile guests before, but there was something different about this. Something unbelievable. And she had no idea that before the night was over, she would be crying in the middle of the restaurant. Minji rushed into the kitchen, gripping the order slip like it was a lifeline. Table 12 beef bulgogi, she called out, trying to sound normal. The chef barely glanced at her. Another one? Minji nodded, but her mind wasn't on the food. It was on him. Kim Soo-hyun was sitting in her section. She had taken his order. He had spoken to her. Her hands trembled as she grabbed a glass to pour his water. Get it together, Minji. She had dealt with difficult customers, rude businessmen, and high-maintenance influencers before. But this felt different. She took a deep breath, placed the glass on a tray, and walked back toward his table. As she approached, she noticed something. Unlike most celebrities, who would be glued to their phones, rushing through their meals, or requesting special treatment, Kim Soo-hyun just sat there. He wasn't looking at his phone. He wasn't hiding behind sunglasses. He was simply watching the restaurant. The way the staff hurried around, the way families laughed at their tables, the way steam rose from hot plates as they were carried past him. It was almost as if he was taking it all in. Minji felt something shift inside her. This wasn't just a meal for him. It was a moment. She carefully set down the glass of water. Your food will be ready soon. Kim Soo-hyun looked up, offering a small, polite smile. Thank you. 2 simple words. But the way he said them *** like he genuinely meant it ** made Minji's heart stutter. She quickly turned away, her face warming. Okay. Breathe. The food arrived a few minutes later. Minji carefully carried the steaming plate of beef bulgogi to his table, placing it down with practiced ease. Here you go, she said, stepping back. Soo-hyun nodded in appreciation. Looks amazing. Minji smiled, watching as he picked up his chopsticks and took his first bite. The moment he tasted the food, his expression changed. It wasn't exaggerated, but Minji saw it, the slight widening of his eyes, the pause before his next bite, the almost nostalgic look on his face. For some reason, it made her chest tighten. He really likes it. And then, something unexpected happened. Soo-hyun looked up at her. This tastes like something I used to eat when I was younger, he said softly. Minji blinked, caught off guard. Oh, really? He nodded, setting down his chopsticks. Yeah. My mom used to make something similar. It's comforting. Minji felt her heart skip a beat. She had served thousands of dishes before, but never had a customer told her something so personal. For a moment, she forgot that he was one of Korea's biggest stars. He was just a man, sitting in a busy restaurant, eating a meal that reminded him of home. And somehow, that made everything feel different. Minji opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, a loud voice interrupted. Excuse me. Can we get a picture? Minji froze. A small group of customers had approached, phones already in hand. Soo-hyun turned toward them, his expression immediately shifting from relaxed to guarded. Minji's stomach dropped. The peaceful moment was gone. And suddenly, she had a feeling that this night was about to become a lot more complicated. Minji's stomach twisted as she watched the scene unfold. The once peaceful atmosphere was gone. The small group of customers, holding their phones up, looked eager, excited, and completely unaware of the tension they had just created. Soo-hyun, who had been relaxed and enjoying his meal just moments ago, now sat stiffly, his chopsticks resting on the edge of his plate. Minji could see it in his eyes. This wasn't the first time this had happened to him. And it probably wouldn't be the last. The customers weren't being rude exactly, but they weren't being considerate either. They weren't asking if he was okay with a picture, they were assuming he would say yes. Minji's hands curled into fists. He just wanted to eat in peace. Soo-hyun glanced at them and offered a small, polite smile. But Minji noticed the difference. This was his public smile, the kind celebrities were forced to wear in situations like this. He didn't want to cause a scene. But he also didn't want to take pictures right now. He opened his mouth, probably to decline politely, but before he could, Minji stepped forward. I'm sorry, she said quickly, forcing the most professional tone she could manage. But we have a strict no-photo policy in the restaurant. We want to respect all our customers' privacy. The group turned to look at her, surprised. Soo-hyun's gaze snapped to her as well. One of the customers frowned. But it's just a quick picture. Minji kept her polite smile in place, but her voice was firm. I understand, but we have to follow our policy. Thank you for understanding. There was a beat of silence. Then, reluctantly, the customers lowered their phones. One of them mumbled, all right, fine, before they walked back to their seats. Minji let out a quiet breath of relief. She wasn't sure if the no-photo policy was an actual rule, but at this moment, she didn't care. Soo-hyun sat there for a moment, watching her. And then, he smiled. Not the polite, public smile from before. A real one. Thank you, he said softly. Minji felt her chest tighten. It wasn't just the words, it was the way he said them. Genuine. Sincere. Like he wasn't used to people standing up for him like that. She swallowed hard and quickly shook her head. No need to thank me. I just didn't want your meal to be interrupted. Soo-hyun nodded slightly, picking up his chopsticks again. For the first time that night, Minji felt something shift. She had always believed that celebrities lived in a different world, separate from ordinary people like her. But in that moment, she realized something. He was just a man who wanted to enjoy a quiet meal. And she was just a waitress who had the power to give him that. Minji tried to return to work, but her mind kept drifting back to Kim Soo-hyun. After the small confrontation, the atmosphere had settled again, though the buzz of whispers still lingered in the restaurant. She glanced toward his table, expecting him to be distracted or annoyed. But instead, he was eating normally. No rush. No discomfort. Just enjoying his meal again. And that made her smile. At least I did something right. A while later, Kim Soo-hyun finished his meal. Minji saw him reach into his pocket, pulling out his wallet. Her heart pounded. Is this it? Is he leaving? She quickly grabbed the bill folder and walked toward his table, pushing aside the strange disappointment she felt. Here's your check, Mr. Kim. Thank you for dining with us, she said, keeping her voice professional. He took the folder but paused, looking at her thoughtfully. You've been working hard all night, he said. Minji blinked. Oh, thank you? His lips quirked slightly. Do you enjoy working here? She wasn't expecting that question. Did she enjoy it? She loved the people she worked with. She was good at her job. But, was it what she wanted to do forever? She hesitated. I do, but it's tiring sometimes. He nodded, as if he understood exactly what she meant. Well, he said, placing his card inside the bill folder, I hope you take care of yourself, too. Minji gave a small, polite bow. I will. Thank you again for coming. Kim Soo-hyun smiled one last time before standing up and making his way toward the exit. The restaurant was still buzzing with whispers, but this time, no one stopped him. The bell chimed softly as he walked out the door. And just like that, he was gone. Minji stood there for a moment, processing everything. Then, she remembered. The bill. She quickly opened the folder to process the payment. And then, her breath caught. Her hands shook. Because inside the folder, along with the signed receipt, was a thick stack of bills. A huge tip. More than she had ever received from any customer before. Her vision blurred. This wasn't just a tip, this was more than a week's worth of her salary. And next to it, on the receipt, was a small handwritten note. Scroll for your kindness. And for all the nights you work hard without being noticed. Keep going. Her chest tightened. Tears welled up in her eyes before she could stop them. She had worked so many long nights, smiled through exhaustion, served people who never even looked her in the eye. But tonight, someone had noticed. Someone had seen her. And that broke her. She wiped her face quickly, trying to keep herself together, but Ji-hoon, her co-worker, had already rushed over. What's wrong? He asked, panicked. Why are you? His gaze dropped to the receipt. And then, he froze. Minji, he whispered. Is this? She nodded quickly, still choking back tears. Ji-hoon let out a slow, disbelieving laugh. That's insane. Minji swallowed hard, looking down at the note again. Scroll, keep going. She clenched her fists. For so long, she had worked without expecting anything in return. But tonight, someone told her that she mattered. And that changed everything. Minji stood frozen, staring at the note and the stack of bills. Her heart pounded so hard it almost drowned out the noise of the busy restaurant around her. Scroll for your kindness. And for all the nights you work hard without being noticed. Keep going. Her hands shook. Her entire life, she had worked herself to exhaustion, always smiling, always pushing forward, always giving her best. But no one had ever acknowledged it like this before. Ji-hoon was still staring at the bill, his mouth slightly open. Minji, this is more than a tip. This is life-changing money. Minji swallowed hard. I know. For a moment, they both just stood there. Then, Ji-hoon grinned. This is insane, he whispered, nudging her shoulder. I can't believe you made Kim Soo-hyun emotional enough to do this. Minji's face heated. That's not what happened. Ji-hoon smirked. Oh, really? Then explain why he left a handwritten note and the biggest tip I've ever seen. Minji bit her lip, her fingers tightening around the receipt. She didn't have an explanation. She only knew one thing, something about tonight had changed her. And she had a feeling she would never forget it. That night, after closing the restaurant, Minji walked home feeling different. The city lights flickered around her, the distant hum of traffic filling the streets. But in her mind, all she could see was the note. Scroll, keep going. She held it tightly in her hands, as if it were proof that her hard work mattered. For years, she had convinced herself that her job was just a job. That she was just another waitress in a sea of workers. That she didn't need to be noticed. But now? Now, she wasn't so sure. She looked down at her phone, her fingers hesitating over the screen. Then, before she could overthink it, she typed a message. Envelope with arrow. I don't know if you'll ever read this, but, thank you. Truly. I don't know what I did to deserve this, but I won't forget it. She stared at the words for a long moment before finally pressing send. Would he see it? Would he even reply? She had no idea. But somehow, just sending the message felt like the right thing to do. As she stepped inside her tiny apartment, she felt something different in her heart. Tonight, she had been seen. And for the first time in years, she dared to believe. Maybe she was meant for more. Minji lay in bed, staring at her phone screen, her heart pounding. The message had been sent. Envelope with arrow. I don't know if you'll ever read this, but, thank you. Truly. I don't know what I did to deserve this, but I won't forget it. She sighed, locking her phone and placing it on the nightstand. Of course, he won't see it. He's Kim Soo-hyun. He probably gets thousands of messages every day. Still, a small part of her hoped. She closed her eyes, trying to calm her racing thoughts. But then, her phone buzzed. Her eyes flew open. She snatched the phone, her breath catching as she saw the notification. Envelope with arrow. New message from unknown number. Her hands shook as she opened it. Envelope with arrow. You deserved it. More than you know. Minji froze. Her heart pounded so hard it echoed in her ears. Was this real? Before she could process it, another message came through. Envelope with arrow. People like you keep the world moving. You work hard, you smile, and you make others feel seen. It was about time someone did the same for you. Her hands covered her mouth, her chest tightening. Is this really happening? She felt tears sting her eyes again. She had spent years convincing herself that she was invisible. That her work was just something people expected. That kindness didn't always get noticed. But now, she was reading words that proved her wrong. Slowly, she typed back. Envelope with arrow. I don't know what to say. The reply came almost instantly. Envelope with arrow. Just promise me one thing. Minji swallowed, her fingers trembling as she responded. Envelope with arrow. What? Envelope with arrow. Keep going. And don't ever think you don't matter. Her vision blurred. A single tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, but in her heart, something had changed. She had never expected a celebrity to notice her, let alone take the time to encourage her like this. She had never expected someone like Kim Soo-hyun to remind her that she was important. But now, she wasn't just going to go through the motions anymore. She was going to start believing it herself. With a deep breath, she typed her final message for the night. Envelope with arrow. I promise. And as she placed her phone down, she realized. For the first time in years, she wasn't just working to survive. She was working towards something more. Minji woke up the next morning feeling different. Lighter. Like a weight she hadn't even realized she was carrying had been lifted off her shoulders. As she got ready for work, her fingers lingered on her phone, rereading the messages from last night. Envelope with arrow, keep going. And don't ever think you don't matter. She had spent so many nights wondering if her hard work meant anything. If all the long shifts, the exhausting hours, and the endless smiling through tiredness were worth it. And now, she had an answer. She was seen. She did matter. Kim Soo-hyun had told her so. And for the first time in a long time, she actually believed it. When she arrived at the restaurant, Ji-hoon was waiting for her. He practically jumped on her the moment she walked through the door. Minji. Did you see the news? She frowned, setting her bag down. What? What news? Ji-hoon pulled out his phone, shoving the screen in her face. She froze. It was an article. Scroll Kim Soo-hyun spotted at local restaurant, Waitress reaction goes viral. Her stomach dropped. She grabbed Ji-hoon's phone, quickly scrolling through the article. It had photos, blurry ones taken by customers who had been in the restaurant that night. There was a picture of Kim Soo-hyun sitting at his table, another of her standing beside him taking his order. And then, at the bottom of the article, were comments. Speech balloon, I love that he went to a normal restaurant instead of some fancy place. Speech balloon, did you see how that waitress handled the situation? She protected his privacy. Speech balloon, I hope she knows how lucky she is. Speech balloon, I wonder if she realizes how much her kindness must have meant to him. Minji stared at the screen, unable to breathe. People were talking about her. Ji-hoon grinned. Minji, you're famous. Her head spun. She had spent her entire career feeling invisible, like just another face in the crowd, another person serving food, another worker blending into the background. And now, suddenly, the whole country knew who she was? She felt her phone buzz in her apron pocket. She already knew who it was. Slowly, she pulled it out. Envelope with arrow, are you okay? Minji's chest tightened. He knew. Of course he did. She hesitated before typing back. Envelope with arrow, I don't know. It's overwhelming. A moment later, another message appeared. Envelope with arrow, ignore the noise. You were just being yourself. That's all that matters. Minji exhaled deeply, her nerves calming. He was right. She hadn't done anything special, she had just been herself. And that was enough. She smiled softly as she typed. Envelope with arrow, thank you. Again. Envelope with arrow, you don't need to thank me. Just keep being you. Her fingers trembled slightly as she set her phone down. She had spent so long believing she wasn't special. But maybe she was finally starting to see herself the way he did. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid of being noticed. Minji took a deep breath, staring at her phone screen. Envelope with arrow, you don't need to thank me. Just keep being you. Something about those words stuck with her. For so long, she had believed that being just a waitress meant she wasn't important. That her kindness was just part of the job, nothing extraordinary. But now, for the first time, she felt like she mattered. The restaurant was still buzzing with curiosity. Some customers stared at her, whispering excitedly. A few even asked if she had really served Kim Soo-hyun, if she had spoken to him, if he had left her a secret message. Minji just laughed it off. She didn't tell them about the note he had left behind. She didn't tell them about the messages. Some things were too special to share. Ji-hoon, however, was loving the attention. You do realize you're basically famous now, right? He said, grinning as they cleaned up after the dinner rush. Minji rolled her eyes. I'm not famous, Ji-hoon. Not yet, he teased. But don't be surprised if a director calls you and offers you a drama role as the waitress who captured a superstar's heart. She threw a napkin at him. Stop. He laughed, dodging it. I'm just saying. It's a great story. Minji shook her head, smiling. Yes. It was a great story. And she had been at the heart of it. That night, after closing, Minji walked home under the glow of the streetlights, her heart feeling lighter than it had in years. She had spent so much time believing that she was just a background character in everyone else's story. But now? She knew better. She pulled out her phone, hesitating before typing. Envelope with arrow. I think I'm starting to understand what you meant. It was late. She didn't expect a reply right away. But then. Envelope with arrow. Good. It's about time. She laughed softly, shaking her head. Envelope with arrow. I don't know what comes next, but I think I'm excited to find out. A pause. Then. Envelope with arrow. You should be. The best stories happen when you least expect them. Minji stopped walking, staring at those words, her heart swelling. For so long, she had been afraid to dream. Afraid to hope for more. But now, she was ready. She smiled, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. And as she walked forward, she realized. This wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning. Speech balloon. If you've made it this far, type I matter in the comments.